My son-in-law had the audacity to invite the entire family on a lavish tropical getaway right in front of my face, only to conveniently forget that I existed. He smugly explained that there was only enough money in the budget for the four of them and his own parents. I didn't argue. I didn't cause a scene. I just offered a thin smile and told them to enjoy themselves. But when they finally pulled up to the high-end resort in Antigua, I was already there, reclining in the lobby. Julian, my son-in-law, turned red and started shouting, accusing me of stalking them and telling me to get lost. Then the head of security stepped in, and after a few quiet words from the staff, the look on Julian's face shifted from arrogance to pure, unadulterated terror. Before we get into how they ended up on their knees begging for my mercy, please remember to subscribe to this channel and share your thoughts in the comments. I spent the afternoon setting the dining table with a fine porcelain, the set Eleanor and I received as a wedding gift nearly 45 years ago. It's delicate white bone china with a whisper of a gold rim. Over 4 decades, only 3 pieces had ever chipped. The late afternoon sun filtered through the heavy amber curtains, the same ones Eleanor and I hung back in the late 90s. They cast a warm, nostalgic glow over everything. I had spent all day preparing Sarah's favorite meal, a slow-cooked pot roast with rosemary, carrots, and buttered potatoes. It was the exact recipe her mother had perfected before the illness took her from us. I had even printed out formal name cards for each setting. I've always believed that small touches matter. They arrived 20 minutes late. Julian burst through the door first, his energy aggressive and dismissive. Sarah trailed behind him, her eyes glued to her phone, barely acknowledging the home she grew up in. Julian's parents followed. Lydia was draped in a silk blouse that likely cost more than my quarterly property taxes, and Victor wore a navy blazer with polished gold buttons. They walked into my dining room and looked around at the kind of pitying expressions tourists might give a crumbling museum. Arthur, Julian said, giving my hand a brief, limp shake. Thanks for having us, I guess. I kept my voice steady. Of course. Please sit. Dinner is served. I had positioned everyone with intent. Sarah was to my right, Julian beside her, and his parents sat across from them. I took my place at the head of the table. I brought out Eleanor's silver serving platter, the steam from the roast filling the small room with a rich, savory scent. This is quaint, Lydia said, her eyes roaming over the dated floral wallpaper and the framed photos of Sarah's graduation. I heard the promotion finally went through. Sarah, I said, you worked incredibly hard for that senior VP title. She didn't even look up from her screen. MHM, it's all about networking, Dad. You have to know how to navigate the right circles. The word stung. She had no idea that I had spent 3 hours on the phone with a former business associate, a high-level executive at a hotel conglomerate who owed me a massive favor from 20 years ago, just to make sure her resume didn't get buried in the pile. She thought it was her networking. Julian reached for the bottle of wine I had set out. It was a 2015 Napa Cabernet that had set me back $70 I probably shouldn't have spent. He squinted at the label, his eyebrows shooting up in surprise. Finally, something drinkable in this house, he remarked. He poured a generous glass for Lydia, then Victor, then Sarah. He completed the circle and set the bottle down at the far end of the table, well out of my reach. He didn't offer me a single drop. Sarah watched it happen and said absolutely nothing. Julian has such a refined palate, Lydia chirped, taking a sip. We made sure he grew up appreciating the finer things. Victor leaned back, eyeing the ceiling molding. Arthur, have you thought about selling? This place is a relic. We just finished our kitchen remodel. Honed marble, industrial-grade appliances. The equity alone would probably get you into a nice managed care facility. The curtains are interesting, Lydia interrupted, feeling the fabric between her fingers as if checking for dust. They must be, 30 years old. They work just fine, I replied quietly. Julian shifted his chair, the legs scraping harshly against the hardwood. He angled his body toward his parents, effectively creating a wall that cut me off from the conversation. Sarah followed his lead, turning her back to me. So, big announcement, Julian said, grinning. We're doing a family week in Antigua. Azure Reef Resort. 5-star, private beach, the whole 9 yards. We leave on the 21st. My fork stopped halfway in my mouth. Antigua? That sounds beautiful. I've heard the Azure Reef is world-class. Julian's smile turned sharp. It is, but we only had the budget for 5 tickets. Us and my parents. The math is pretty simple. The silence that followed was deafening. 5 tickets. For people at the table besides myself. The exclusion was a deliberate, calculated slap in the face. I can cover my own expenses, I said, trying to keep my hand from shaking. I'd love to spend that time with the family. Sarah slid her phone across the table to Lydia to show her pictures of the resort's infinity pool. She didn't look at me when she spoke. Honestly, Dad, we just need a break from you. It's been a long year. The room felt like it was shrinking. Julian jumped in with a fake, patronizing tone. It's not personal, Arthur. It's just about quality time with the immediate family. You understand. I looked down at my plate. My hand, which had been reaching for the serving spoon, froze in midair. I slowly lowered it to my lap. The pot roast sat untouched, growing cold in its own juices. I understand, I said softly. I pushed my chair back. I'll go get the dessert. No one protested. Julian was already refilling the wine glasses. Everyone's glass but mine. As I walked into the kitchen, I could hear them laughing. I heard Lydia asking about spa packages and Victor talking about his golf handicap. I heard Sarah's laugh, that light, easy sound she used to make when she was a little girl. And I'd take her for ice cream after school. I didn't get the dessert. I walked straight through the kitchen, down the hallway, and up the stairs to my bedroom. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, still wearing the same blazer I'd worn to Sarah's wedding, the same one they had just spent the evening mocking. Through the floorboards, I could hear the clink of glasses. My wine, my table, my home, their celebration. Something shifted in me then. It wasn't hot rage. It was something much colder, precise, like the tumblers of a lock falling into place. The house finally went quiet around 10 p.m. They were staying in the guest rooms because they had drunk too much of my wine to drive home. I sat at my old mahogany desk and opened my laptop. There was a life I lived that my daughter knew absolutely nothing about. After Eleanor died, I had buried myself in work. I was a facilities manager at a major hospital, but on the side, I had started investing. I bought a distressed hotel in Savannah back in 2008 when the market crashed. I renovated it myself, turned it profitable, and sold it. Then I bought 2 more. I managed everything through an LLC called Sterling Group Ventures. To Sarah, I was just a retired old man who took on consulting gigs to stay busy. She never asked for details, and I never offered them. I opened my spreadsheet, current portfolio, for boutique hotels and a share in a luxury development firm. Total liquid assets, $3.8 million. Over the last 12 years, I had given Sarah and Julian over $80,000. I paid for the $30,000 wedding. I gave them the down payment for their sleek electric car, the one they drove past me in last Christmas without stopping. I paid for their first apartment's furniture and a frantic $8,000 credit card bill Julian had accidentally run up. Every time, Sarah would hug me and tell me I was the best. But apparently, $80,000 and a lifetime of devotion weren't enough to earn a seat at the table in Antigua. At 3 a.m., I stood in the doorway of Sarah's childhood bedroom. She was asleep, her breathing shallow. On the wall hung a photo of her at age 7, hugging me at a theme park. I touched the frame. The glass was cold. I wondered when that little girl had disappeared and been replaced by this woman who viewed her father as an embarrassing relic. At dawn, I heard them whispering in the kitchen. I crept to the top of the stairs. We just have to frame it as simplifying his life, Sarah was saying. He's sitting on all that equity in this house. He doesn't need 4 bedrooms. Exactly, Julian replied. The old man doesn't have expensive tastes. He'd be perfectly happy in a 1-bedroom apartment near the park. We could use that cash to clear the debt and finally move to the north side. Sarah laughed. He's so stubborn, but he'll do it if I tell him it's for the good of the family. I went back to my office and closed the door silently. My hands didn't shake as I typed Azure Reef Resort Antigua for sale into the search bar. The listing popped up immediately. The owner was looking to retire and was motivated for a quick exit. Asking price, $2.1 million. It was a 25-room boutique operation with a private cove and a loyal clientele. It was beautiful, but it was struggling due to poor management. I looked at my bank balance. I looked at the listing. Then I looked at the calendar. They were leaving on the 21st. Azure Reef, I whispered to the empty room. Let's see how much you really want that break from me. I called my lawyer, a sharp man named David who had handled all my previous acquisitions. Arthur? It's 6 a.m., David groped. I need to buy a property in Antigua, David, and I need the deed in my name by the 20th. I don't care what the expedited fees are. Close it. The next few days were a whirlwind of international wires, frantic emails, and late-night consultations. I played my part perfectly at home. I waved them off when they left the house, wishing them a wonderful trip. I even gave Sarah $200 in cash as spending money, which she took without a thank you. I flew out to Antigua 2 days before they were scheduled to arrive. The heat was thick and fragrant with salt. When I reached the Azure Reef, I met with the owner, a man named Miller, who looked like he had been defeated by the hospitality industry. "You're a godsend, Mr. Sterling," Miller said as we signed the final papers in his cramped office. "The staff is worried about their jobs." "The staff is safe," I told him. "In fact, everyone is getting a 10% raise. But I need total cooperation for the next 7 days." I met with the general manager, Elena. She was sharp, professional, and clearly exhausted by Miller's lack of vision. I laid out my plan. "We have a party of 4 arriving on the 21st. The Morgan party," I said, handing her a folder. They booked the deluxe ocean suite. "I want them moved. Room 10 and room 11, the ones overlooking the gravel lot and the laundry facility." Elena blinked. "Sir, they've already paid the deposit for suite. I am the owner now, Elena, and the owner says those rooms are undergoing emergency maintenance. Also, I'm implementing a new pricing tier for unaffiliated bookings. Everything, drinks, meals, spa services, goes up by 40% for this specific party." Elena looked at the names. Then she looked at me. She was smart enough to see the resemblance in the photos. I showed her. She didn't ask a single question. "Consider it done, Mr. Sterling." The morning of the 21st, I was positioned in the office behind the reception desk, watching the security feed. A taxi pulled up, and Julian climbed out, looking like a man who owned the island in his linen suit and designer sunglasses. Sarah followed, looking radiant and ready for her break. Lydia and Victor emerged, already complaining about the humidity. They marched into the lobby, and Julian slammed his credit card onto the mahogany counter. "Morgan, we have the deluxe suite, and we like our welcome drinks immediately." Elena smiled with professional ice. "Ah, Mr. Morgan, welcome. I'm afraid there's been a slight change in your reservation due to an ownership transition and emergency maintenance. The deluxe suite is unavailable." Julian's face went purple. "Unacceptable. I have a confirmation email. I want to speak to the manager." "I am the manager, sir. We have moved you to our garden view rooms. They are functional, and because of the last-minute change in ownership, our rates have been adjusted. You'll find the new itemized list in your welcome packet." "Adjusted? How much?" Julian hissed. 40% across all services," Elena said smoothly. While Julian was mid-screaming fit, I decided it was time to make my entrance. I stepped out from the office, holding a tablet and looking over a set of blueprints. I walked toward the front desk, as if I were in the middle of a very important business meeting. Sarah saw me first. Her mouth fell open. "Dad!" Julian stopped mid-sentence. His eyes bugged out. "What the hell are you doing here? Did you seriously follow us to Antigua? This is stalking. I'm calling the police." Lydia and Victor looked at me with pure disgust. "Arthur, this is pathetic." Lydia spat. "You're ruining a family vacation because you couldn't handle staying home." I didn't flinch. I turned to Elena. "Is there a problem here, Elena?" "This guest is being quite disruptive, Mr. Sterling," she replied, her voice echoing through the lobby. "Mr. Sterling?" Sarah whispered, the color draining from her face. I looked at Julian. "Actually, Julian, I don't follow people. I lead them. And as for the police, I'm sure my security team would be happy to call them for you. But they'd be removing you from my property." The silence that followed was heavy. I could hear the rhythmic clicking of the ceiling fans. Julian's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Your property?" Victor stammered. "Arthur, you're a retired maintenance man. You don't own a resort in the Caribbean." "I own 4, actually," I said, my voice calm and low. "And as of 48 hours ago, I own this one too. Now, you can either take the rooms overlooking the dumpsters at the new premium rate, or you can take your luggage and find another hotel. I hear the one 20 miles down the road has a very lovely 2-star rating." Julian lunged forward, his face contorted. "You senile old fool. You did this on purpose. You're harassing us." The security guard, a mountain of a man named Marcus, stepped between us. He didn't have to say a word. His presence alone was enough to make Julian stumble back. "I'm providing a service," I said. "You wanted a break from me, Sarah? Well, here it is. I won't be joining you for dinner. I won't be at the beach. You'll have all the space you ever wanted, but it's going to cost you." They stayed. They had no choice. Every other high-end resort on the island was fully booked, and they didn't have the pride to leave once they realized how much a last-minute flight home would cost. Over the next 3 days, I watched the disaster unfold from my balcony. The garden view rooms were stifling. The air conditioning units in those specific rooms were undergoing repairs, meaning they hummed loudly and barely moved the air. The hot water was intermittent. When they went to the restaurant, they were seated at the table closest to the kitchen door. Every time they ordered a cocktail, the bill came back with the 40% surcharge clearly marked. I watched Lydia's face turn ashen when she realized a simple lunch for 4 was costing them nearly $300. On the 3rd night, I was sitting at the bar having a quiet glass of scotch when Julian approached me. He looked haggard. The humidity had wrecked his hair, and his expensive linen suit was wrinkled and stained. "Look, Arthur," he said, his voice cracking, "let's be reasonable. We're family. This petty revenge is beneath you. Just give us the suite and drop the surcharges. We're already $5,000 into this trip, and it's only Tuesday." I turned my glass slowly. "Family? That's an interesting word, Julian. Was it family when you skipped my glass during dinner? Was it family when you laughed about selling my home while I was standing right upstairs?" Julian blinked, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. "You heard that? I hear everything in my house, Julian, and I see everything in my hotels." "Arthur, please," he stammered. "Sarah is miserable. She's been crying for 2 days. Then she should have thought about that before she told her father she needed a break from him." I replied, "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a resort to run." The breaking point came on Thursday. Julian's credit card was declined at the bar. He had hit his limit. He tried another card. Declined. He had to go to Victor and Lydia for help, but they were also hitting their caps. The luxury vacation had turned into a financial black hole. They ended up eating pre-packaged sandwiches from a local bodega and sitting on the public beach because they couldn't afford the resort's cabana fees anymore. When Friday morning arrived, they gathered in the lobby to check out early. They couldn't afford to stay the final 2 days. The final bill was $4,600. Julian looked like he was going to vomit. Sarah was staring at the floor, her shoulders slumped. Victor and Lydia were arguing in hushed, angry tones in the corner. I walked out of the office and stood by the desk. "Problem with the bill?" Sarah looked up at me. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Dad, why? Why would you do this to us?" "I didn't do this to you, Sarah. I just stopped doing everything for you. I've spent 12 years being your safety net. I've spent 12 years being the man you call when the roof leaks or the credit card gets too high. And the moment you thought you didn't need my money anymore, you decided you didn't need me either." I leaned against the counter. "You wanted to see what life was like without the old man. This is it. Expensive, uncomfortable, and lonely. "We're sorry," Julian whispered, though I could tell he was only sorry because he was broke. "Please, just help us get home." "You have your return tickets," I said. "Use them, but when you get back to Atlanta, don't go to my house." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean?" "I've placed the house into an irrevocable trust," I said. "I am the sole beneficiary. The locks have been changed. Your things are in a storage unit, and I've paid the first 3 months of the rental fee. Consider it my final gift." "You're kicking us out?" she gasped. "No, I'm letting you be immediate family. Somewhere else, you and Julian are adults. You have high-paying jobs and big titles. You don't need my equity. You certainly don't need my quaint curtains." They left the resort in a beat-up taxi, not a private car. I watched them go, and for the first time in years, the weight in my chest was gone. I stayed in Antigua for another month. I worked with Elena to truly revitalize the Azure Reef. We fixed the pool, updated the menu, and turned it into the jewel of the cove. It became one of my most profitable properties within a year. As for Sarah and Julian, the fallout was inevitable. Without my house to sell and my bank account to lean on, the cracks in their marriage became canyons. Julian's arrogance didn't play well when they were living in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment they could barely afford. Sarah reached out to me 6 months later. She sent a long, handwritten letter. There were no requests for money, no mention of Julian, just a lot of memories about her mother and an apology that felt, for the first time, genuine. She told me she had filed for divorce. She told me Julian had been hiding even more debt than I realized. She was working 2 jobs now, trying to dig herself out of the hole they had dug together. I didn't invite her to the resort. I didn't send her a check, but I did call her. We talked for an hour. We didn't talk about networking or promotions or granite countertops. We talked about the pot roast. We talked about the old curtains. We talked about the things that actually matter. I'm still the owner of the Azure Reef. And Sarah is coming to visit next month. She's paying for her own flight, and she's staying in a standard room. She asked for the one with the garden view, the one overlooking the laundry facility. She said she wanted to remember what it felt like to be grounded. I told her I'd have a glass of wine waiting for her, and this time I'll be the one pouring. If you enjoyed this story of lessons learned and respect earned, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more. Let us know in the comments if you think Arthur went too far, or if he gave them exactly what they deserved. Thank you for listening.